Hello, I'm Moira Alderson with the BBC News. Israel's new Prime Minister Naftali Bennett has promised to unite a population frayed by 4 elections and 2 years of political stalemate. Mr Bennett succeeds Benjamin Netanyahu, who was Prime Minister for 12 years. Sebastian Usher reports.
By just one vote, the coalition of left, right, centre and even an Arab party is now in office, united by just one desire, to remove the man who's dominated Israeli politics for years from power. Naftali Bennett, once Mr Netanyahu's protege, is now in charge, with his partner in the coalition, Yair Lapid, due to take the reins in 2 years. But it's a big question whether they'll reach that milestone. In the Knesset, Mr Netanyahu vowed once again to do all in his power to bring down what he calls a dangerous government.
The G7 summit in southern England has closed with a series of bold promises to tackle the pandemic, alleviate climate change and promote democratic values. But the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and aid groups have said more was needed, including a global vaccination plan. Adam Fleming reports.
The leaders slightly exceeded their target of donating 1 billion COVID vaccines to poorer countries over the next year, if funding for future doses is included alongside individual jabs. There was also a commitment to build the frameworks to prevent and fight future pandemics. The leaders recommitted themselves to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050 and to eliminate most coal power. There were several references to China. Pledges made this time included working together to respond to China's impact on world trade, and a task force to explore a clean, green alternative to Beijing's enormous Belt and Road initiative to invest in infrastructure in developing countries.
President Biden has arrived in the Belgian capital, Brussels, for 2 days of meetings with NATO and the European Union. Monday's talks are expected to see the United States resume its traditional leadership role. NATO leaders are expected to formulate a firm message for Mr Biden to take to Geneva on Wednesday, where he'll meet President Putin. The government of President Daniel Ortega of Nicaragua has arrested 5 opposition politicians under the country's new treason law. Candice Piet reports.
The latest detainees include several prominent dissidents of the Sandinista National Liberation Front, the revolutionary movement that swept to power in 1979. Among them is a former Sandinista health minister, Dora Telles, and Hugo Torres, a former general. Earlier this month, police detained 4 presidential hopefuls who might have challenged Mr Ortega's bid for a 4th consecutive term in November's elections. But the latest arrest suggests Daniel Ortega has moved beyond detaining potential election opponents to arresting any prominent member of the opposition who challenges his rule.
World News from the BBC. Swiss voters have narrowly rejected government proposals to limit carbon dioxide emissions. Voters have also rejected proposals to limit or even ban synthetic pesticides. Imogen Foulkes reports.
The no to limiting CO2 emissions is a huge shock. The Swiss government drafted this law carefully. Rejection undermines Switzerland's entire strategy to comply with the Paris Agreement on climate change. The no to the proposals on pesticides is not quite so unexpected. Switzerland's powerful farming lobby argued farmers would go out of business and food prices would rise. But today's results are a devastating blow for environmentalists.
GB News, Britain's first new dedicated television news channel in more than 20 years, has taken to the airwaves. In an opening monologue, its chairman, Andrew Neil, said the channel was proud to be British and aimed to empower those who felt their views were ignored. The channel says its target audience includes marginalised communities that voted for Brexit 5 years ago. Critics say GB News will be similar to the right-wing American channel Fox News. In football, the hosts Brazil have won the opening match of the delayed Copa America, beating a Venezuelan team ravaged by coronavirus by 3-0. The match was played in an empty stadium because of COVID restrictions. The South American football authorities have defended the decision to press ahead with the tournament, despite the risks posed by the pandemic. The Netherlands have beaten Ukraine 3-2 in the European Championships in the most entertaining game of the 3rd day of the tournament. Earlier, Austria overcame North Macedonia 3-1, while England secured a 1-0 victory over Croatia at Wembley. Meanwhile, the Danish midfielder Christian Eriksen remains in a Copenhagen hospital, receiving treatment for a cardiac arrest after suddenly collapsing during Saturday's match against Finland. That's the latest BBC News.